Right.
Right, hold on, let me see. Okay, the Karchazu Kuliyama, Shufra de Tarat de Masnisin, when everybody saw the Mishnahs which were resolved appropriately, as he says in the bottom, Kasher Ulam Yopin Yisuach Vaseder Shem Mishnahs Rebbe, Viduka the Milsa, Viduk Hamilim Sheish Shem Mishnahs Rebbe, Shein Ba Mila Chasera Mila Yisera. There's no additional word or missing word. Everything is very precise. We know from that very often, especially the Ushami, Darshans, and Mishnah, almost as if it's Tersh B'Ksab, that it's because of the precision of the language, which is expected from a Mishnah. So the Vamidas advar duka the milsa shavko anach tinyane davutanu. Then they left behind those brisos which they were learning. Upashto Hill and Hilchasah b'chol Eretz Yisrael. And these halachas became popular throughout Eretz Yisrael. So this became the standard text. V'avin Hilchasah dilana, and they are now our halachas, meaning our version of the Mishnayos. Anakulish Tabiku, all the rest of us were left behind. Vavin Kigon Brisa, and they are now like a Brisa, meaning out external to the actual Mishnayos. Command the Ma'ayin Pirushe. Somebody listens to his mind in them, somebody who looks into them, it's as if he's learning an interpretation. Obelishne Reviche, or a expanded language, something which is not as terse as the Mishnah itself. Avo, Samchad Yisrael, but the reliance of Am Yisrael's Alina and Hilchosa is on these halachas on the Mishnayos which were made by Rabbi. Hava, the Kablina Yisrael and Am Yisrael is them Kachazinu Be'emuna, where when they Kachazinu, I guess, is appropriate. Um, uh, in trust. Interesting language. The accept them, or they, the way he translates it here is they accept them out of trust. And then he meant flaking the ship, sleep bone. It became universal. Nobody argues that this is primary. The Mishnah is the primary source of our traditions and our halachas. Aladar Urcha Tirtza Rebbe, then Urcha Tirtzin Rebbe Lashita Sijay Mishnah. This is how we resolve all the six orders in the Mishnah. The love, the Shavkan Kamoy Ruboy the Basroi. Not that the the later left most of it for the early left most of it to the later. The says here. Achaza shel shel chachmei Kiran. I saw my time a shavka kamoy rubel basroi. Why did the earlier sources leave the majority of the discussions to later sources? So, and now the Rav Shmuel Gaon is going to answer that question. So he says,
The question is Gemara, right? Why is there so much in Gemara that wasn't in the Mishnah?
no, no, I think he means later Tanoim. Uh, uh,
Oh, okay.
later Tanoim here. Um,
Why did the early Tanaim leave it to the later one?
yes, yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Kamoy lo v'tzichel b'chibur milei. The early ones did not have to compose the words. The Megarson Peinu. They learned about Peh v'chol chai mirabban the other b'kabah. Each of the rabbis knew b'msorah lo v'tzichel brinu michtavinu. They have to compose it and write it down. Ad the Chore Beis Mikdash. They said Mikdash until Beis Mikdash destroyed become time. But then the Hanach Rabbanan Kamoy, and then the students of these earlier rabbis, the Rose Lavi and Kavason, they didn't know it the same way about V'tzichel chibure, and they require compositions. The Rabbi Lesben Rosh Talmid Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Lesben was the primary students of the primary student of the primary students of Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. Chat Shaila Mile Hanach Kachayla Mine, when they asked him Hachmile Porshan, the those words which are explained Mishnei Sirei Yom Kippurim. Chala Pliny Kipsa Mamzer Beis Asham. I have no idea what he's talking about here. The The Gemara says has 6 questions that they asked him. Chala plenty keeps a mamzer base isha. They asked him. So this Snei Siri Yom Kippur. They weren't about the 2 Siri Yom Kippurim, but they're mentioned. These 6 questions are mentioned in that perek called Perek Shnei Siri Yom Kippurim.
Mhm.
I don't think it brings them. The issues here. Um, um,
Doesn't look like he's explicit about them.
no. There's a long note here in the printed text. I don't think we have to. It's mostly about the Girsa here. Um, um, he does say that the specific question, which is the issue here, is why do we find most of the names of Chachamim Achroinim in the Mishnah? Shirgon explains that since the Mishnah was made by Rabbi, and it's made primarily on the basis of Mishnahs, which the later Chachamim taught us, so it's natural that we'll find their names. But they're not the ones who are Mechayishis Halachas, but rather out of Masorah from previous generations. So he also says that all these words, he doesn't explain what the questions are, the references are, but they're all references to questions which are asked in the Gemara there. So Lo Adulon, he didn't respond to him. Anything. El Dachir, he pushed him aside. Britannia, and we learned there, it's not because he wanted to distract them. Ella Shalo Amar David Shlo Shamu Mipi Rabbo Miralim. He never said anything which he didn't hear from his Rabbeim. So the point being that if Orkanos doesn't necessarily always quote previous generations, but clearly he only was quoting previous generations because he never said anything when he was asked 6 questions which he did not hear from his Rabbeim. He refused to answer them.
Mhm.
So we see clearly that later generations might have Mishnayos attributed to them, but not because they were the originators of Mishnayos, but rather because they were adjacent to the generation of Rabbi, and Rabbi recorded them because they were the last sources of the Masorah to come to him. There's Yushami, which just had recently in Shabbos, which says that if you can't attribute a statement all the way back to the originator of the statement, at least attribute the last generation which you know of. So the assumption is that everything comes from earlier generations, but we don't necessarily have that line of Masorah. We just assume it existed, and we quote whoever we quote, because that's the ones which we know. And that's why Rabbi had to arrange the Mishnah. It's 2 generations after the Shemad of the Churban Beis Hamikdash quieted down. The 3rd generation of the Churban, that was the time when he was able to compose it, and he composed it and named the names of the people who were adjacent to his generation. Okay. It's interesting what he says here. I don't know. It's kind of like a statement, which he throws in, which is not directly related to text. But Amr Lesmer goes, Avgav David Rosh Tamid Rabbi Yochanan Zakai Harbe Lochas Loshim Ayipi Rabbo. Melech did not hear from his Rebbe. Koshkin Sharat Amidim. Fi Shem Ayu B'dur HaChurban B'Osa Dor Lo Yima speaking the Modim Arav Harbe Mnei Chamas Mitikba Gzeros. They weren't able to learn a lot with the Rabbeim because of the oppression and the decrees. Came Shalom Neitz Rav Harbe, since they learned so much of the Rabbeim, Harbe Loch Solution Rav and Daitom in Mesikin Salacha. They would infer Locha on their own. Feel Rabu Mene Machlokos, that's in the many Machleksim, Itzuchul Chibar Mishnah, and therefore required the Mishnah to be composed. That's not what the text is saying. The text is not talking about that point. That's an interesting point to make. Now he's inferring that from the fact that Rabbi mentions that Shira Gaon mentions the generation of Shmat, but in reality, the main point he's making here is the point that Rabbi Lesman Horkanos, like I said, he said many things over, and we would think that he may have represented his own. No, everything came from earlier generations, but we attribute it to the later generations. Okay, and now we come to, according to the screen version, a new parak. Of course, in the text version, it's not a new parak. We Masechta the Chazis und Isbu Muktam Umuchar. In terms of the Masechtas, we see that there some which seem to be earlier and some which seem to be later. He says here, he doesn't explain it, but it sounds from the printed text. It sounds like that. No, actually, he's just saying not in terms of chronology, but in terms of the order. And the Burimi says here in the text, I thought that Rosh Hashanah is now in addressing the second question, which asked him on the order of the Masechtas. And it's important to know this order of Masechtas, to know the principle, how the principle of Machlokas Chakach Stam or Stam Chakach Machlokas applies. So Reb Shira Gaon shows them that they have a mistaken premise. Okay, so the Masechta Chazis and Isbu B'Haim Muktam Muchar. It's from the question, it seems that they assume that some of them are chronologically earlier, chronologically later, and they're not necessarily in order of the chronology, rather in order of the distribution that the sixth Sijay Mishnah compelled. So I think the question is, how can we tell it's Stam Machlokas Stam if they're not in order of chronology, they're in order of some other arrangement. Okay, so the Rabbi Katirza Mishnah saying the Rabbi, when he arranged the Mishnahs, he didn't arrange the Masechtas in a specific order, one after the other. He learned each one separately, individually. Whichever one he wants to learn chronologically earlier, he learns earlier. The average wants to learn chronologically later, he learns later, without regard to the order in which he learns them. We don't know chronologically which one came first, which one came second. But the Hilchos Spirit Prokim in each and every Masechta internally, there Rabbi went in order. So there is no order between Masechta. There's no Stam Machlokas Stam across Masechtos. So internally within a Masechta. But Rav Huna said, "B'chad Masechta lo min ein sein l'mishnah." In one Masechta we don't say ein sein l'mishnah, but tat Masechta, but in two Masechtas I mean ein sein l'mishnah. Says no order for the Mishnah. Call chad v'chad minau. You can remember Dimmer Rabbi Tiny ratio. Each one you could say perhaps Rabbi taught this one first or that one first.
So I have a question here, which is that Kahati often brings the Rambam, who provides an order to the Seder of the Masechtot within each Seder.
Yes, that's how, but they weren't necessarily learned by Rebbe in that order. In other words, even though he arranged the Masechtos in a specific order, he didn't necessarily learn them chronologically in that order, and therefore you can't extrapolate from one Masechta being after the Masechta, having a Stam in the first Masechta, Machlokas in the next Masechta, or vice versa.
All right, so I know the discussion here is purely the issue of chronological order and not textual.
Right. There is an reason why the Mishnah is a specific order, but that's nothing to do with how Rebbe learned them, and therefore you can't assume that one is chronologically before the other.
Okay.
So the when we find a Stam Machlokas in one Masechta, I mean we say Ein Halacha Stam. The halacha is not like the Stam because Machlokas came afterwards. Machlokas Chakach Stam, we find Machlokas after the Stam. B'chad Masechta, we mean Halacha Stam, we say Halacha like the Stam because that came afterwards. Avatat Masechta lo min Mishu, we don't say to ourselves Shun Ein Leim say they have no order. Rabbi Yossi Nam Yachas Fielu. Rabbi Yossi also holds that way. Mihu, however, Amai said, but Babi Nezikin in the Masechtas of Nezikin. In other words, the three Bavos, the Kul Chad Masechta Ninu. Those are one Masechta. So there'd be Mukta Muchar, Stam Machlekas Chakach Stam, even across several Masechtas, because they are all a Masechta, the first gate, the second gate, and the third gate.
So we have some Masechta where the order of Prakim in the Bavli is different than the order of Prakim in the Mishnayot, like Menachot. One or two others I think I've come across.
It is rare, though. Yes, and Sanhedrin also we have that.
I'm sorry?
Sanhedrin as well.
Okay.
Yes. It's a good question. I don't know if he ever addresses it. He's not addressing it here.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a good question. Udamitun, Udchamisu, Maita Medimu Kippurim Mishkalim. So the why they're being Shkolim should come first because Yom Kippur Shkolim is associated with Pesach, right?
Right.
And Yom Kippur is later on. I don't know. I don't know. In our order, we have Shkolim first. Indeed, in our Shasim, Shkolim appears immediately after Psachim, and Yuma is later on, right? Avovad is Sukkah Yontif Tanina. But certainly Sukkah comes before Yontif, meaning before
Sure.
Beitza. Yontif is Beitza. With Sarachi Rosh Hashanah, and then afterwards Rosh Hashanah, and it's possible that's the opposite. So I'm not sure what good with this the after did us.
Looks like not much of an answer here.
No. But Umil Islam Maymar, however, we can say Dakti Mesach. In other words, I don't know the order in those Mesachlis. Mil Islam Maymar, we can say Dakti Mesach Shabbos Tchila. I put Mesach Shabbos first, Chil Chashiv Shabbos Tuva. There's the Moed Shabbos come first because it's very significant. Basa Mesachlis Erevin, and after this Erevin the Damile, which is similar to it, V'Chad Yonu, same matter. Basa Mesachlis Psachim Shapesach Rishon Moadim. It's first of all Yom Tovim. The Chakim and all the holidays, Kol Shana. Basa Shkolim, Milfonov, Shkolim, which really comes before a Pesach, because you tell Echad Ba'adam Shimon Shkolim, but it's obviously subordinate to Pesach, even though it technically comes before Pesach. But I guess Pesach should come first because first you really Yotzef. So it's Ke'echad Minyav. I guess that's the answer. It's like one of its subcategories. So Ashkelon Dina said Yuma the Dami l'Shabbos even Yuma Kippur l'Shabbos Dami. Then comes Yuma because Yuma's of severity on the level of Shabbos and Eruvin was a Chiyuv Kares, right? Besides Yom said Yuma after Yuma Tinim says Sukkah the Besides Yom Kippurim comes after Yom Kippur v'Chad Godelu. Simon says Sukkah Tinim says Yontif v'Chayin Yanohu. It's one Indian, I guess, because it's about Yontif.
That's Moed Cotton, Betson.
What?
He's talking about Moed Cotton.
Oh, he's not talking about Beitza?
Oh, maybe you're right. Sorry. Forgot about Beitza. You're probably right. It's probably Beitza.
Let's see here. Yeah, Yontif is Sech Beitza. Okay. Even though Rosh Hashanah is for Yom Kippur, but it's not serious Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur. Mistake Basra, Mesachas Tainis. After this, when I say Tainis, from the Achar Rosh Hashanah is Man Revia. After Rosh Hashanah is the time of the rain. Okay, it's after Yom Kippur too, but put Yom Kippur first. It was Man Zvia, the time of rain, the time of planting. It's like one matter. So even though it's weird because I guess maybe because we're judged on Rosh Hashanah and we're judged on rain.
Okay.
Uh, the Anyway, so that's where Rabbi used to learn it. Well, we didn't mention Megillah. or
Or more cotton.
Moed Katan, yeah, or Chagiga.
Yep.
Um. Anyway, so if he's nichel doing the chuli, it should just be other. You don't have to learn that way, because you know, obviously, I think in fact in Yerushalmi, in Bavli Chagiga's last Masechta in Moed, and in Yerushalmi Moed Katan's last Masechta in Moed.
Okay.
So it's not etched in stone. Bab Gazin Masechta Dispu Seder. Even though the same Masechta do have an order, the Karmin on Michte Tana Masechta is plenty of solik. We know the Tana just came from Masechta so and so. The Masechta stated the Karmin Bagon Michte Tana mean Nazir Kasolik. The Tana just finished Nazir. The Masechta Shua saying Michte Tana mean Michte Mamako Solik. Alma Yesh Seder. The Yeshem Seder. So you see that there is an order. It's interesting. These words are not in the printed version. He just says um, these words Amad Yeshlim Seder.
Okay.
So, says, but I guess here it says Yeshlim Seder, Yeshlim Dafka via Seder Azeh. Those are where it is clear that they learned them in order. Even so, I think in the Yusham, I don't think the Yusham they do go in the same order. I think there's some of them that I think the Dorim Nazir Soita might be a different order, but I might be wrong about that. But anyway, but the bottom line is there is no specific hard and fast order. Okay, this brings us to the end of another parak, so I think we'll stop here for today.
Okay. You should go ahead.
Okay, and this actually it starts a new parak in both versions. Parak K in the printed version and parak Ches in the screen version.
Okay.
Okay, have a great week.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.